Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Solid Ground. Look, Simon O'Connor here. Lovely to join you again on what is actually the 141st episode. So welcome to Solid Ground, particularly to first-time viewers. I'll explain why I'm looking a little bit casual and things are a bit echoey. But for those who followed me last week, why I can also report this makeshift studio for now is certainly a lot warmer. But look, good morning to you all. Solid Ground is where we talk the social, the cultural, the political, the faith issues of the day, things that have captured my attention over the next half an hour or so. But Solid Ground is also a live show. So if you have questions or comments, and I can see some coming through already, if you have questions or comments, or something that is happening in New Zealand or around the world that you want me to make comment on, put a message in the chat. And you can do that via Family First's YouTube channel or from its Facebook page. So if you're on my Facebook page, for example, you're on TikTok or Instagram, LinkedIn, welcome. It is wonderful to have you along. I'll see those comments afterwards, but I say the live ones come to me via the Family First YouTube and Facebook pages. Guys, I am still away from Auckland, so I'm not in my usual studio. Those of you who joined me on Thursday will know I'm down Queenstown way, and that morning we had not worked out how the heating operated in the place we're staying. So I was freezing to death. But Rachel and I have since worked it out. We've actually fixed the system for the owner, which is great. So I'm not wrapped up like an Eskimo or an Inuit, whichever way you're meant to say it these days. But also, we haven't been able to completely fix the studio side of things. So I'm still in the lounge, and I'm sorry to people that it's a bit echoey. It's actually a very big open space with concrete floor. So for sound, it's terrible. But anyway, it's lovely to have you all along. And because even though I'm working, I've been chilling a bit more. I've got lazy. I haven't even bothered to shave, which is an absolute disgrace. But anyway, good morning to all of you coming on board. I can see here. So Mike, good morning. Lynette, lovely to have you along. We've got Samuel there in Timaru. Darren saying it's very wet. If that's back up in Auckland, good for the garden, but not much else. Jackie, good morning. Lovely to have you along. Got Lynn there from Chester, lovely to have you along there too. Rosie, I see it's wet in Taupo. We've got Robin there in Hamilton, lovely to have you along. Food Dogs, Trucking. We've got Dean, good morning. Bernice, oh look, again, just lovely to have you all along. And as I say, if you've got any thoughts or comments or other things which are happening, you're going, hey, talk about that, Simon, let me know. And a reminder too, of course, make sure if you want to be, given a heads up of these live shows, podcasts and other things we do, make sure you subscribe or like our content, and then you'll get lots of posts. Simple as that. Good morning, Ben. Lovely to have you along. Rachel and NZ. I had always wondered, but Rachel, lovely to have you along. A name I should be able to remember because it's my wife's name, which makes life easy. We've got, I can't quite, Jelena, there we go. Sorry, Jelena, lovely to have you along from lovely Masterton. Sorry, for people who don't know, I do this on a little laptop. And so everything is very small. And so sometimes it takes me a while. But Jelena, lovely to have you along. Have family down there in Masterton. Lovely place. And Catherine, good morning. Anyway, I better stop. I'll spend all morning saying hello to you all. Some interesting and I hope some positive news to start. This is a New Zealand story. A teenager called Tyler. Long and short, 17 years old, now actually suffering a new round of a brain cancer. But why I wanted to share this story is, as a baby, as a child, also had cancer and was said, look, you won't even make your third birthday. And now reaching the 17th, which in itself is amazing. But always, with some of these stories, a sad aspect to it as well, as I say, now has a very destructive brain cancer. So a whole new battle but I just thought remarkable in itself to have survived all those years. And you'll know where I come from on a pro-life space, that often, and said it many times before, just because the doctors give someone a diagnosis or even a prognosis, doesn't mean that they're right. And so particularly when we're looking at end-of-life aspects, the doctors get it wrong. And Tyler here from Tauranui is just an example of that. As I say, was expected not to get to even their third birthday, but now has pretty much almost completed their teenage years. So we certainly wish Tyler well. Can't be easy. That's mother there taking the photo. I mean, that's quite something to actually share the story. But again, quite remarkable. And this also caught my eye, as you might know if you follow the show. And I see Ken's asking me a question. I'll come to that, Ken. I will come to that. It's around the India FTA. I just found this remarkable. I don't know if, well, actually, some of you may know I love the whole space exploration side, but this is just very short footage of a rocket blowing up, which I don't know why, but I found it absolutely fascinating.
We're left stunned as a huge fireball lit up the night sky.
Oh no.
Oh! The explosion happened during a routine test of a rocket called New Glenn.
That was all. I just found it remarkable, the power, just the total power of these things. So this is one of Jeff Bezos's rockets. I mean, fortunately, no one harmed. But anyway, just the power of technology that we have, absolutely remarkable. Ken's asking, what do I think about National join up with Labour to sign the Indian agreement? Quite normal, actually. When it comes to free trade agreements, and I used to chair the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Committee, I can only think of one example. It's actually around the Trans-Pacific Partnership, where there was a breakdown between National and Labour. So put it in a different way, Ken, by and large, the Labour Party and the National Party work together when it comes to trade deals, similarly around defence, and often, not always, but on foreign affairs matters. It's not a written rule, it's not an expectation, but just over the years, the real partisan left and right side of things is put to the side. So for me, there's completely and nothing unusual about that. Also, to me, there's nothing unusual that Winston is going against it. He uses things like free trade deals, and certainly this one with India, to leverage his immigration question. So that's exactly where he's gone, questioning just how many migrants will be allowed in. Now, by the way, he's welcome too. I'm still getting my head around it. My concern is that, and it remains, I think I talked about this on Political Playback months ago, I'm concerned that the current government, and particularly the Prime Minister, put their reputation on the line to get this deal. And so you've got to ask what was given away. That said, listening to some of the submissions, a lot of the industries are pleased about it, from kiwi fruit and wine growers and so forth. That's positive. I suppose the negative at this point is dairy is not included. But I just say to people, I mean, and by the way, everyone's welcome to a different view and thought, but I think a free trade agreement of pretty much any nature with India is a step forward. It's a huge market. It helps us actually diversify away from China. But as everything, the devil's in the detail. But I think by and large, it's a good deal. There's some things which have got me a little concerned. But yeah, overall, I think it's okay. And I see Scylla, good morning, lovely to have you along. And Edmund's asking about the AI. So that was something that came up last week, I think, in the budget, wasn't it? The government's looking to get rid of 8,000 or so civil servants' jobs. And one of the things they were saying they'd do is use a lot more AI. So in the work and income space, I assume they'd go, look, we'll get AI to do a lot of the paperwork. I can see some sense that, I mean, I worked within the Ministry of Social Development years and years ago, and there is actually a tedious amount of data-driven stuff that could be better done by AI. For example, I used to do all the contracting for the Ministry of Social Development, so all the employment programs and support programs and mental health programs and programs to support artists, for example. Lots of reports. Every quarter, reports would have to be sent in, and I had a team of people who have to read those reports, collate the data, take what they had done, put it into the tables and the spreadsheets that we used. I can certainly see AI working there. I can see AI actually reading what people send in. So if you're actually applying for a benefit, I don't see a problem with AI reading that. I think I heard the government say, and it needs to be this, that actually there still has to be a human element. You don't want to be applying for a sickness benefit or an unemployment benefit and it's all just done by AI. You need human input. But I can see how you use it, you leverage it. I mean, I use AI now to help me review things very, very quickly. So that's sort of where I go. Robin's asking, why do we have to give? Well, we don't. I think that's one of the misunderstandings. It's in there that there's an aspirational goal that New Zealand ends up investing, I think, something like $20 billion into India. I don't think it's reciprocated. I think there's other things which obviously we're expecting India to do for New Zealand. But I can understand why people go, whoa, that's a lot of money. But it is investment and it is aspirational. So, yeah. And Luke is saying, should decision-driven, well, I think it can assist it. I don't think the decision should be made by AI, but AI can assist. In the same way, I would argue now, for those of us who use it, I jump onto, I don't know, Google and use its AI to assist me with my thinking and decision making, but I'm still making the decision. So I suppose the key thing for me with AI is it's there as a tool. It is not the end in itself. I mean, I was doing some research on the budget last week, because literally between the budget being read on Thursday and Bob and I doing political playback, we had basically 2.5 hours. And so I'm using AI to assist. But it's not making the decisions, I make the final calls. In fact, some of the things it was saying, I thought, hey, this doesn't sound quite right. Yeah. Anyway, I was going to share, sorry, actually very quickly, as I say, I'm not in Auckland at the moment, but I thought I would just quickly show, because it's been just quite magical down here. There's a place called Ebb, and there's a lovely Rachel. I don't know if you can see her amongst the lights. That was, again, it's just been very lovely for us, a change of scenery. Some of you might have seen on my social media, on the third morning, Rachel said, oh, pull open the blinds, because the morning prior we had seen an air balloon sort of in the hill where you can see the light way in the distance. And this photo is not doing justice, but I pulled open the blinds and there at eye level, I kid you not, and not quite immediately outside the window, but there's a hot air balloon and people's like, oh my Lord. Probably gave them the fright of their life. Don't think about that too much. And then the other day, a rainbow from end to end we could see, and I hope my photo does justice, but I think there is just something quite beautiful in a rainbow, obviously derived from the Old Testament, a great sign of hope, but very beautiful. And for the sharp-eyed, you'll actually see that it's a double rainbow. So I just thought that was tremendous. And then we were walking around, it's called Lake Hayes, and there's a picture there. It's called a mirror lake, and I think you can see why. But look, I just thought I would share those, because there is just something beautiful about our world. And I think with all the issues and the problems that we face, it's actually nice at times to reflect on just, how good things are. Jumping overseas, Bob and I found this ironic, funny, but just very telling. So Jonathan Haight's the man in the picture there, and we've had Jonathan actually as part of the forum on the family, I think about 3 years ago. He's well known for at least two reasons. One was his first book with a guy called Greg Lukianoff. It was called The Coddling of the American Mind. And since then, he's gone on to write about the harms of social media, in particular the harms of giving devices to young people. So actually, he's become sort of one of the foremost researchers in this space, tracking it as we've seen the development of smartphones, young people's anxiety, their depression, and so forth, even their academic achievement has just tanked, be it in America or overseas. So as I say, he's someone that we here at Family First have used a lot. We've had him at the forum. In fact, you can still jump onto our YouTube channel or onto our website and actually find his talk. But in his earlier work with Greg Lukianoff, it was called The Coddling of the American Mind, and I'm not going to explain the whole book, we'll be here all morning, but he said basically we have a generation of people now in universities and young people who cannot cope with alternative ideas. They can only be affirmed in their own beliefs. And so the irony as he's been talking about this, as was Greg, they've written about it, they've tracked it and said, look, this is actually a major problem. They point out the reasons why these young ones have become so coddled, born into safetyism. Everything has to be safe, including ideas. The irony is he is a professor at New York University, and the students have objected to him speaking at a graduation ceremony. So here is an eminent professor, an author, a very well-respected writer and researcher, asked by a university to come and speak. I think it's the graduation address, and the students object to it. Talk about irony, but talk about explaining and demonstrating exactly what Jonathan's talking about. Young people at a university, sad, worried, anxious that he would be speaking. I mean, it is beyond ridiculous. He's not even speaking into controversial issues, but they can't cope with it. It does begin to tell you where certainly these American colleges are going. But New Zealand's no different. I think it was it last year, the Free Speech Union were wanting to have a discussion at Victoria University around free speech from both sides. The students objected. They had a little tantrum and cried, and the university basically cancelled that talk. And this is sadly what is happening across a lot of universities in the Western world. I saw it even the other day. So I think it's Grant Robertson. He's the former, of course, Labour MP. He's now the Vice-Chancellor of Otago University. And after the definition of a man and a woman bill, he sent out a letter to all the staff saying, oh, look, some of you must be feeling very worried and anxious, and we stand with you. I mean, to be honest with you guys, grow up. Not you, lot here, but the ones like Grant Robertson and others. I mean, if you cannot cope with ideas that are different to yours, you're weak-minded, you're feeble. In fact, you're not very much use and contribution to society, particularly if you're going to a university and you can't cope with ideas. And the same with Grant's email, deeply inappropriate. Universities are meant to be neutral spaces, or rather a place where ideas can be contested. And so for Grant to have written an all-staff email saying, oh, look, you know, this bill definition of a man and woman is problematic. I know all understand some people, we stand with the trans community. He's taking a side within a university where actually if an academic wants to say, no, I know what a man and a woman is, I know what biological reality is, and the guy over address there is never a woman, they should be allowed to say that. But this is unfortunately what we are seeing, and the universities in particular are becoming a major problem for this, and I see it too with some of the young ones that I interact with. They don't really think anymore. They talk about critical thinking, but that's really actually a Marxist comment. They're not actually demonstrating critical thought. They cannot cope with alternative ideas, which is why you're seeing screaming and yelling at times, and again, the tantrums that you see being put on social media. So it's a bit of a concern, as I say too, for the likes of Grant Robertson to be emailing all the staff, giving a perspective on a bill that's deemed controversial. And it shouldn't be controversial. And you know, here's just a couple of things in this space. So the United Nations, as you know, I have very little time for the UN, but there is one special rapporteur there. Her name's Reem Assalam. In fact, I've talked about her before. She's the special rapporteur for about violence against women, and she's speaking out actually about the Australian doctor Jillian Spencer. So Jillian Spencer is a psychologist who's been sacked from her job because she's criticised gender ideology. She's saying that actually, as we all know, intuitively know, gender ideology is exceptionally harmful to people, particularly young people. It sends them on a very destructive path. The evidence is very clear on that. Actually, they don't get better by being put on puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. They get worse, more suicide ideation and so on. Anyway, Jillian's been speaking about that in Australia, and she's lost her job. Her other colleagues, medical colleagues, are basically, I have to be blunt about this, gutless cowards because they won't stand up. Because they know, I mean, obviously you've got the ideologues running the show, but the majority of doctors know that Jillian's right. But as I say, they're gutless cowards to not speak up. And yep, I understand people worry about losing their jobs, but when good people stay silent, as Edmund Burke said, evil triumphs. So good news is this special rapporteur, Reem, has written actually saying this is completely wrong. She's allowed to actually express her views. It's a freedom of speech issue. It's also a science issue. Science works by allowing a range of views and discussions. And that's one of the reasons, amongst many, that gender ideology is so dangerous. Not only is it distorting reality, and I would argue a form of child abuse when it's directed towards children. In adults, it's more about indulging fetishes. What it's doing, though, is also shutting down reasonable debate. And that's why I mentioned the Grant Robertson example earlier. Here's the leader of a university, firstly denying reality, B, buying into a deluded ideology, and 3, sending a message to all the staff, you will not question my view or this supposed university's view on the issue. Very, very dangerous. And speaking of dangerous too, you've got this, this came out a couple of weeks ago from a school here in New Zealand. Long and short, this is why you need to be very careful if you have kids or grandkids to work out what your school is and isn't teaching them. So what you have to bear in mind is that this, at the top it says we need to teach about inclusion and including gender respect. Now that's all just code for gender ideology. But get this, it's for years 0 to 3. So this school is bringing in basically a type of sex ed program to 5, 6 and 7-year-olds where they want to talk to them about inclusion around gender respect as well. In other words, they're going to start indoctrinating 5-year-olds about boys can be girls and girls can be boys. In fact, if you want to be a unicorn or a couch or a giraffe, you can be. That's what they are talking about. I think it's this program, so it's not this, so the school's bringing the program in, actually gets the kids to try and start playing around with different outfits and dresses and so forth. Again, to start the confusion at age 5. At age 5. Personally, I don't think it needs to be taught at all. Why on earth, apart from wanting to actually divert children down a very destructive path, would you be telling a 5-year-old that actually, have you thought, little Johnny, that you might be Mary? Or Mary, have you actually thought that you might be a boy or something else? I mean, this is pretty sick stuff. I can see Ben saying that too. It's very, very dangerous. And again, this is one of the reasons why you need a definition of a man and a woman. Bill, it's got to be improved, no end. But this is a massive problem. So whether or not it's coddled children in America who can't listen to an eminent professor, whether it's the UN, believe it or not, having to speak up to protect doctors from being sacked for calling out the madness which is gender ideology, or schools in New Zealand which are trying to force very dangerous ideas onto young people, basically sexualizing them. I mean, this is the other thing, isn't it? Maybe I'm in a far too relaxed but blunt mood. Why is it that these gender ideologists, facilitated by the likes of this school, are so obsessed of getting to children? You've got to think about, I mean, I suppose you already have. There is something deeply concerning about all of this. And as Viv's saying, that's why your kids go to a Christian school, which is great, but also keep an eye on those Christian schools, I'd have to say. Some do a good job, some do not. You still have to be careful. So I just suppose can say on behalf of Family First, do check out what they're teaching your kids in school or your grandkids, not just in the relationship and sexuality space, but any of this gender space. What are they teaching there? But even check out what they're trying to teach in the sciences and math. I've come across cases where science is being parked up and basically teachers are now preaching pagan mumbo jumbo, to quote Sean Plunkett. It's got to stop, and the way you help it stop is being aware of what they are doing. And the other thing you can do is make a submission, so they're open now for this definitions of a woman and man build. So we've already sent, as in Family First, an email out last week. There's material on our website. So obviously, if you've got your own thoughts, please write and share them. I think that's really important. But if you're going, I know I don't like what's happening in society, that men are forcing their way into women's spaces, stealing women's sports achievement, and more, and acting violently too. I mean, just look at how social media operates, or what happened to Posey Parker. If you oppose these guys, they get violent, either physically violent or verbally violent, or like that doctor in Australia, Jillian Spencer, they'll target you and try to sack you. I mean, look, I can say it myself as someone who was targeted not for the trans stuff per se, but being unapologetically pro-life. They come to get you. They come to take you out. And they can try, but they can't silence all of us, which again is one of the encouragements. Don't be silent on this. Put in your submissions. Be under no illusion when you have the Grant Robertsons at the universities, and we've got the Public Service Association, the unions running around insisting that their people run about saying, send in submissions to say this is a stupid bill. By the way, this is the unions that will always talk to you about the gender pay gap. Isn't this one of the other ironies, people? And you see it in the MPs too. There's no such thing as a man or a woman can be whatever they want to be. They can just define themselves however they want. But start talking about the gender pay gap, pay equity, women's places in boards and corporate boards. All of a sudden they know what a biological woman is. It's just so absurd, guys, that it is nuts to me. And speaking of nuts, I'll finish on this because there was another article on this today. This gentleman here has won compensation because the New Zealand courts said his employer breached, in this case, Pacifica values. Look, there's always nuance and details to this. I think you'd want to start by saying, look, you don't want employers to be rude and nasty. But I think in this case here, the employer, I think, emailed the worker and said, oh, look, your job is over. So as I understand it, the employer followed the correct process or a correct process. But because the employer in this case was Pacifica, the employer needed to respect his values, which meant that the employer, I think, they'd say, when I was in Fiji, I tell her, no, you have to have a conversation face to face. Now look, if an employer can do that or wants to do that, that's fine. But I just found it a growing absurdity. Not only is New Zealand already over-regulated, if you run your own business, you know that there's 50,000 hoops you have to jump through. Now an employer has to be sensitive to other people's cultures. And in fact, there's an article following up today in the Herald with a top lawyer saying, no, not only do employers need to respect employees' cultures, also their religions. Now, that won't apply to Christianity, of course, because if you try to be a Christian in the workplace and stand up for Christian values, whether it's on life issues, gender issues, marriage issues, or even just simply saying, hey, I'd love to say grace before a meal, good luck to you. I doubt you'll have any luck. But now, because of this court ruling, we're going to find all other religions and cultures saying, well, actually, to an employer, you need to make sure there's a prayer room for me, a space for me to do my prayers. You actually need to make a space where I can put a mat down, have some kava and have a conversation with my colleagues. It's not good enough to have a canteen with simply a microwave. I mean, I'm thinking off the top of my head here, but you can see how this absurdity grows very quickly. You can see from my side, I just think it's a very silly decision by the court that you now have to somehow abide by other people's culture. And I suppose this brings me to the final point. One of the things I'm struck with in the West is always this push that we have to respect other people's cultures. And of course we want to a degree. We want always to be polite. But we don't seem to be particularly sympathetic to our own culture, the way that we do things. It's always having to apologize, if you will, for a Western culture, if we were to call it that, a Judeo-Christian culture. That doesn't get respected, but a whole lot of others are to be. It's just remarkable. So again, the most simple way to look at it is, okay, good on this guy wanting his culture respected, but is he respecting the culture of his employer? And again, even step back from the moral and philosophical sides of it all, New Zealand businesses, and I can see some comments coming through here, including from Jaime saying that once Marxism entered the Western universities, we've begun to see that, I'm paraphrasing here, the downfall of the West. I think it's true. Marxism has a lot to do with this, as is being noted. But look, fundamentally, we should be able to obviously be respectful of cultures, but it goes both ways. So just as this employee has now won $75,000 from his employer because the employer didn't respect his values, was he respecting his employer's values? Why does one get to trump the other, you have to ask? And that's the final point. New Zealand businesses already do it hard. I know some of you are in small business, medium, even in some large businesses. It's hard enough as it is. There's too much regulation in New Zealand already. And now employers are going to have to sit back and go, am I respecting the culture of my employees? Am I respecting the religious traditions of my employees? I mean, God forbid how that's going to work when you've got different faiths and cultures in place. It's absurd, guys, but welcome to modern New Zealand. I'm going to leave it there. As you can see behind me, the sun is rising, and I should probably go and have a shave and clean up. But look, next time you see me, I will be back in Auckland on Thursday morning. I will be more professional. I won't be so much on the break. And just a heads up for Thursday as well, Bob is not available this Thursday, so I have Tanya Unkovic coming on to talk with me on political playback, but that is on Thursday. But guys, always a pleasure. I'm going to go and have to read all these comments, but you have a wonderful day, and thanks for being part of Solid Ground.